Peter, let me bring in Peter. Okay, so Peter from Illinois is saying, if God doesn't exist, then we can't exist. Hi, Peter.
Yeah, and I just real quick, Peter, I want to say,
what's your name?
Hey, Peter, just real quick, is this correct? What the call screener has? If God doesn't exist, then we can't exist. Is that right?
That sounds strange.
Yes, that's the position.
Okay, well, yeah, but then you just gave me a first premise of like an argument, right? Because it is the so if you're saying if God doesn't exist, then it is the case that we can't exist. Well, it's not the case we can't exist because we do exist, and then God doesn't exist.
Wait. Let's just start from the top. Okay, so Peter, you say if God doesn't exist, then we can't exist. Explain.
Okay. I kind of, it's a conditional statement, as in I can't prove whether God exists or not. I'm trying to describe what would happen if God existed, which is if God exists, then it'd be as if he's imagining us, right? Like imagine yourself as a character, and you give him all the intricacies you have. You have, like, if we, just to be clear, we define God as like a guy who is, or an entity, not a guy, like an entity who is omniscient, omnipotent, and benevolent. I believe those are the three, right?
Okay, wait, Peter, are you talking about something that could be, or are you talking to us about something that is? You're saying if there was a God. First of all, you're saying you don't know if there's a God. You seem to have no. You're saying if there was a God, you could be his imagination.
I can't prove he exists.
Well, okay.
Peter,
real quick. Yeah, I'm sorry, just because this to me seems like very easy, done in the water, quick, right? And the reason why I'm seeing it this way is I'm seeing this as a conditional statement, right? So the antecedent is if God doesn't exist, and the consequent is then we can't exist, right? Or it is the case that we can't exist.
Right.
You gave me the first premise of a modus tollens argument, right? So I could just say back to you, if God doesn't exist, then it's the case we can't exist. But it's not the case that we can't exist. My support for that premise right here. And then the conclusion just follows. Therefore, God, well, if you want to say, you're saying if God doesn't exist, then we can't exist, right? Well, so, I mean, I'm not really understanding, like, if he doesn't exist or he does exist. Because if it's the case that he does exist, then it's going to follow that God does not exist, right? So I want to make sure we have that consequent or the antecedent down. Do you have it as God doesn't exist or God does exist? Because that's going to help me.
Okay, yeah, I guess I should clarify about I guess the better word of not existing is as in we exist as an imaginary.
Real quick, will you tell me the antecedent of that premise. I just want to make sure it's right. Otherwise, what I'm saying won't work, right? Is it if God doesn't exist or if God does exist?
It would be if God exists, then, and it's like if God exists, then we also exist. It'd be, how should I explain this? It's like the reason why I keep interrupting, and I'm sorry to do this, it's just really important. If that's the case, if your premise, because I'm reading on the call screener and it's flipped, and so I want to make sure that this is correct. If what you're saying is if God exists, then we can't exist, you've given me an argument against theism, right? Because if it's true that I exist, then it's just the case that God does not exist, right? That follows from from the second premise. Right? If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. I just want to explain I just want to explain, like, I guess I'm miswording. I'm not like I'm not an arguer. I'm just a regular guy.
That's fine. I just want to make sure. That's all.
Let me clarify this. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just like, you've given me an argument for atheism. That's why I'm like dumbfounded.
Well,
can I simplify? Hold on, Peter. Hold on. No, Peter, just hold on. Jimmy, can I just ask him some questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Just
let me give me some time with him. Okay, Peter, do you believe that God exists or not? Yes or no?
I believe God exists. Sorry. Hello?
Yes, go on. Do you believe God exists? Yes or no?
Okay. Yes, I believe that God exists. And that therefore we are essentially imaginary.
Oh, no, wait. One step at a time. One step at a time, okay? So do you believe that we exist? Yes or no?
I think we're imaginary, essentially. We don't exist and we don't hold any value or matter at all whatsoever.
Okay.
Outside of God.
Okay, so
does that make sense? That's
so when you say
Okay.
So when you say we can't exist, what you mean by that is that we are God's imagination. Is that what you mean?
I guess, yeah, that's the gist of it. Yes, we are like entirely within God's mind, and we don't exist outside of it. Like we're not an entity outside of it. Like we're not like a
do we
like
exist?
A machine that
do we
built.
exist?
It's more like God
Okay,
is
let's do
imagining.
one step. Peter. One step at a time. One step at a time. Okay. So you say we don't exist outside of God's imagination. Okay. Does that mean that we exist within God's imagination? If there's a God, we exist within God's imagination.
I think we
yes
actually.
No?
It's more like it would be more like. Sorry, I would say no to that. As in, can I explain it? Like I'm trying to communicate. I must be like the phone must be like keep giving us a bit of lag time.
If we are God's imagination,
yeah.
aren't you saying we exist as His imagination?
No, I wouldn't think so. It's like if Walter White is an imaginary character, he doesn't actually exist. He's just a written being that like we all see as when we see Bryan Cranston play him, right? It's not like we exist. It's more like
it's a character. It's a character that exists. It exists as a character.
I don't think though. Like I would say, existence is not like I disagree with that word.
So So we don't. I'm not going to try to get into the meaning of existence. Okay, so but you by not existing means that we are just mere imaginations of God. Okay, that's what you're. So you're saying there is a God, and all that we are the imagination of God. That's your claim, right? So I just want to say, is that accurate? Is that an accurate description of your view, right?
I don't feel like I think we disagree strongly on the meaning of existence. Still,
I'm not using the word because we don't seem to be using the word existence in the same way. I'm just putting away that word. I'm not even using the word existence. I'm saying you say there's a God, and what we are is we are His imagination. I didn't even use the word existence. That's what you're saying.
I'm not sure we're in. I feel like He just imagines us, right? It's like a concept, like a car. You imagine a car, but it doesn't exist, right? He might imagine it in his mind, but the car doesn't actually exist in his mind. It's just a concept.
So you're taking an issue with the word "are" when I say we are His imagination. You're taking issue with the word "are" because that would mean that we exist.
Yeah, I would say that. Yes, like I take issue with the word "are," I guess, but it's more like the character Brian, like the character Walter White doesn't move through time. He's just a character, right? We just see his story.
I have a basic understanding of your claim now. Now listen, let's move into the coming up with the argument or evidence part of it. So we now understand kind of what you're saying. Do you have any evidence or good arguments to back up this claim? There you go. Ahead.
Well, I guess the question. It's a conditional statement, so I can't prove. I can't necessarily prove that. Like, I'm not willing to put down, oh, God definitely exists or He doesn't exist. I'm just saying that we'd have to imagine a world where God, like, we'd have to essentially.
I'm not talking about where. Peter. I'm not asking what your claims are anymore. We moved past the claim part. Okay, we have a basic understanding of what your claim is. Okay. I'm helping you understand what I'm asking you.
Okay.
I'm trying to tell you. So now that we have kind of established what your beliefs are, okay, we don't want to hear you repeat what your beliefs are. What we want now, is now for you to provide something that could back up what you believe, not the actual belief itself, something that backs up the belief.
And after that, I have an objection that's a rebutting defeater for this view. Just completely kills the view in cold water.
Okay, but go on, Peter. Do you have anything that backs up what you have to say?
Okay. Well, the characters can we can assume that a character can be like, oh, I think I believe something, or they can be written such that they think things, or you can write such that they say certain things and they think these things, but they don't. They're just being written to act in a logically consistent manner, right? So. Like, we could all just be thinking these things, but it's just God writing these things as happening. Does that make sense? Like, as concepts, as characters, right?
So, Peter, what I want you to understand that what you're doing, Peter, what you're doing is you're giving us more details about what you believe. Okay, but that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for something to back up what you believe, not provide more details about what you believe. Do you? Yeah, go on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. I'm not like I haven't like vocalized this a lot, so I'm just working through.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm just here to work through with you. I'm trying to be collaborative, not confrontational or
yes.
try to argue with. Like
I'm doing the same thing.
You're fine.
You're
you're fine. There's just a fatal. There's a fatal flaw.
Okay, right.
No, you're good. You just explain to Armin that, and then I'll explain to you what the fatal flaw in the argument is, given the conditional that you gave me.
Peter, I'm not trying to shut you down. I'm just trying to help you understand what I'm asking. Okay, so it's not just you. A lot of people because a lot of people don't have these discussions, so they don't see the difference between providing details for what they believe in and backing it up. So this is not just a you problem. This is everybody that hasn't been involved in these conversations has this problem. So not everyone, but many people. So, but when I'm talking to you, I'm not trying to shut you down. I'm just trying to make you understand what the question that I'm asking. So don't think like I'm trying to be overly confrontational. Okay, but go on.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess my argument would be, if God were to exist and we were not within the scope of imagination, or we were some outer entity, then I would say that then he can't really be benevolent to us, right? Because he doesn't have, like, if it's an outer entity, then you can't, like, there's all kinds of arguments. You've had these before, right? It wouldn't work. Therefore, right, this world where God exists and we're outside of his imagination probably wouldn't work, right? There's so much moral obligation for creating life, right? Like, much less like a child, like even like a creator with like
Armin just wants to know what's the reason that got you to that conclusion, that made you think that, look, if there was a God to exist, we would be figments of its imagination. Just what's the reasons or the steps that support that or got you there? That's all he wants to know.
Yeah.
I guess
because to me, it seems, Peter, what you're doing is you're describing things that could be based on what you can imagine, and you are explaining to us that, like, what you're describing is like, I could see the world being this way. Okay, so these are not arguments; these are just imagining things, and you telling us that you could imagine it being such and such. That's it. Do you see the difference between that and actually providing an argument that supports your claim?
I feel like I'm making an argument, but I can see. I'll try a little bit harder. Sorry.
Okay, you gave a premise to an argument. You gave a conditional statement. Right. If God exists, then we don't exist. But there's a problem with that. Like, someone like me and Armin, we look at that argument. It's like, okay, if God exists, and this is why I wanted to clarify if it was if God doesn't exist or if God exists, because this matters. Sounds like you're saying if God exists, then we can't exist, right? Or what you mean by that is we're like figments of his imagination, or we're concepts in the mind of God, right? We're divine thought, so to speak. But if that's true, right, then someone like me and Armin, right, we just go, well, we do exist. And then the conclusion follows that God doesn't exist. Imagine it this way. Imagine I walked around to somebody and I said, hey, I have a refrigerator, and everybody knows that refrigerator exists, right? So if this refrigerator exists, then everybody knows about it. And I go stumble upon one of the fans of the show, and I go, hey, don't you know about this refrigerator? No. Well, then that refrigerator can't exist because it's constitutive. It's baked into the notion of that concept that everybody knows about it. So all we have to do to falsify it is find one person who goes, I don't even know that proposition existed. I didn't even believe it, let alone know it, right? And so then it just follows. So you gave a premise to an argument. If God exists, then we can't exist. But we do exist. And so therefore God does not exist by your own lights, right? That conditional statement is proven false if the fact that we exist. You're going to have to make a case that we're just imaginary figures. But me and Armin aren't going to buy into that. We think we're real, right? You're going to have to give us what Armin's saying, giving us reasons to even suggest that that's even actually the case. But that just follows from a modus tollens argument.
Right. I would say that
I can help you, Peter. I can help you because you haven't had much experience like most people in building arguments. I could help you make it easier. Okay. So let's say, for example, I come up with you describe to us one scenario that you're saying could be true, right? So I will give you another alternative scenario, and you tell me why this one can't be true. That will make your, because for you to be able to show that your situation, the option that you're selecting is the only viable option, you have to be able to show why other options are not a good explanation or are impossible, right? So, for example, let's say God does exist, okay, and God is all powerful, and He created us. We're not, and we exist. So, how do you refute that? If, like, let's say you have a scenario where God exists, I also have a scenario where God exists. You're saying in your scenario we don't exist. Okay, I'm saying in our scenario, God, who's all powerful, created us, and we do exist. How do you refute this scenario? Why can't this be true? If yours can be true, why can't my scenario be true? Why can't it be true?
Well, are we talking about our world, or are you talking about like some utopia, so to speak?
No, the world that we're experiencing, you're describing that God exists and we don't exist. I just give you an alternative scenario where in this world, God exists and He created us and we do exist. Why is if there is a God, like, why is your scenario okay and mine's not?
I think yours is okay because if it's a copy of our world, then it's like, then there's existing evil, right? Therefore, He can't be benevolent. That's the three criterion, right? Like the omnipotence, omniscience, and benevolence, right? So He can't exist in that world. If we're imaginary, then all this evil is made up, and it doesn't matter, right? So therefore,
so you're
omniscient.
You're trying to,
right?
I see. So you're saying you're making us imaginary to solve the problem of evil. Am I understanding you correctly?
I'm not making. I would say yes. This is the only case where, look, I believe in God, but I don't know why I believe in God. It sucks, right? Like, I don't have any good reason. I just have this hard belief, can't shake, and so I'm just trying to reason it out. I'm an activist trying to reason out why this. Why am I crazy, right? And so this is like, okay, well, this is the only scenario that I can think of is like how I'm coming.
Okay, so
notion.
I see what's happening. So, Peter, let me know if I'm understanding what you're saying. So you believe in God, but you have some issues with the consequences of believing in God. So this scenario that you came up with makes it all work out. It lets you keep the God, but also doesn't contradict with this the problem of evil. So you're saying a lot of suffering in the world, and you cannot justify how an all-loving God would let all of that happen. So you came up with this theory to let God be, but also not have Him be responsible for all this evil. Is that a fair assessment of what you're saying?
Well, I think here's a supporting argument. This is a nullifying argument for the world where we exist. The reason why I think God exists is because, like, if you want to think like critically, we're thinking about imaginary worlds, and in order for God to think critically, He needs to have the ability to think of evil, and therefore evil needs to exist in this imaginary world. You can't critically think without evil. You can't imagine good without evil, right? Like, there's no
what? Why? Why? I don't get that.
In the mind of God.
Why?
Because you'd have to. You, like, as an entity, like as a thinking entity, right? Can you like different, like, if there's no differentiating values, how do you do computation, right? If all the values are one, then there's no zeros, and you can't do computational like you can't even do Boolean algebra.
You don't think that I could choose to take
zero?
You don't think I could choose to take my mom to like her favorite restaurant or her favorite movie, and those be choices? Like, they couldn't just be an array of selection of just things that someone wants to do. Seems like.
Right, but then she would have to have things that she would rather not do, right? There has to be two options.
Yeah, but what's the problem with competing goods? That's what I'm saying. That's what I gave you. I gave you an option of competing goods.
Well, no, because it would say that they're not I wouldn't say they're necessarily competing goods. I would say that.
How are they not competing goods?
I think we're stuck in our perception of morality. If we're imagining your mom is an imaginary mom, does it matter if she gets stabbed horribly or she has the happiest time of life? It's imaginary.
Wait, I'm not. Hold on. I'm not understanding this. Why?
if God was like a good being, you're telling me that God couldn't reflect his nature onto the world and have like a rainbow for me to go sit by, or well, it's kind of weird, like assuming that we could sit like directly under a rainbow, right, in that way, or like some bunnies,
nice.
right, or maybe some kitties that I can go play with, right? Those are options and choices for me. I don't see why I have to have the existence of like, you know, something evil in order for me to make that choice. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it.
Yeah, but I mean, like if you're imagining, who cares? Like if he's like if he wants to imagine us, like he'd rather imagine Breaking Bad than watch like kitty rainbows and like in what's it called, in like some, I don't know, like My Little Pony.
So you're saying God has reasons to have the evil?
I think that he would rather imagine things, and we have no real say in that whatsoever. I would say that like what matters more. What
we might be going on a tangent here, so maybe we go back to the other thing.
Yeah, I just want to say, Peter, have you experienced suffering in your life ever?
It sucks. Yeah,
it sucks. Okay, so you said, I didn't say this. I just say you said it sucks. Okay, so
yes,
given that you believe that this is all imaginary, right? Whether it's imaginary or not, at the end of the day, you also agree that it sucks, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would rather do this, but I also can't tell God for thinking critically and imagining like bad scenarios as well as good ones, because I can't help it either. Yeah,
but
furthermore, like
the idea of you thinking that all of us not existing will make the suckiness of all the suffering go away. It doesn't go away. At the end of the day, whatever problems you had with God existing and evil existing still remains, because you also acknowledge that the suffering sucks and the suffering continues to exist whether we are part of God's imagination or we're not. So it doesn't solve your problem at all.
Imaginary doesn't matter if you're suffering. It doesn't matter. What matters is if there's meaning.
Like you saying it doesn't matter and it sucks are contradictory.
Sorry?
You said it sucks. When you say it sucks, it means it matters.
Yes.
Okay, so it does matter.
It doesn't matter. I think it matters because
you're just but Armin's pointing out that you're just giving like a performative contradiction. It's like if I went up to Armin and I said I'm dead. But that's just a performative contradiction, right? I'm like performing the contradiction of that statement, right? I'm dead. Well, I'm alive. I have to be alive in order to say that statement, right? It's like, in order for you to say that it sucks and stuff, it seems to go against the project that you're fighting for here.
All right, Peter. We go ahead. We want to move on very quick, but I just want to tell you to try to think about the fact that you don't really have something to back up the claims you're making, and if what you're saying is wrong, it's a very dangerous ideology that you're promoting here. Because if we do exist, then then we do matter, and our suffering matters, our goals matters, our dreams matters, our happiness matters. So you promoting an ideology where none of this is real and none of it matter would be, the consequences of that is very, very high, especially given that if you're wrong, this is our only chance at happiness, and you're just trying to dismiss it as all the way as fake. So it's very important for you to spend time not just thinking about things that could be real, but things that are real based on evidence and arguments that could back it up. Okay?
I don't know if I can make it conditional. How would I would like to do some homework. Like, what would I do what would be a good way to develop arguments for that?
Well, if you're talking about arguments, you might want to, if you're talking about because an argument has a very specific meaning. It's a set of statements that generate a conclusion, right? That doesn't necessarily mean it's a valid one. You can give invalid arguments, but you won't get far with them.
Okay.
But you need to learn like soundness versus validity, right? Soundness being truthfulness of the premises, and then validity being like the formal structure of the argument, and understand how to construct one. Okay. Like for example, like look at what I told you. Look at modus ponens. It's MODU at modus, USPONENS, modus ponens, and modus tollens. You gave me a conditional statement when you called, and it was easy for me to look at that and just go, well, if you're saying if God exists, then we can't exist. Well, someone like me who thinks we exist, I'm like, okay, but I do exist, and so it just falls out for free for me that concept of a God couldn't exist. If
baked into the concept of God that everybody doesn't exist. Well, like all I have to do is just observe my experience. And I'm like, okay, well, that concept can't be true, right? Because I exist. And that just falsifies that claim entirely. And so I would look into that, because all it took for me is just to look at that first premise and then go, well, we do exist. And then take the conclusion out of modus tollens, which is just not P. So I would look into like propositional logic if you want to construct arguments. Otherwise, it's just going to be like rhetoric.
Well, I mean, I would say it in this way. First of all, Peter, you ask such a great question. You're like, okay, I want to go do some homework. Where do I start? Like, I want to congratulate you for that question. That was an amazing question. That I was very impressed with you saying that. So a good job, right?
Yeah.
So what I've noticed you do is, so far you just provide claims, and you're saying, well, these could be true. And what you have to understand is that making a claim and providing an argument for it is completely different. Okay, so for something to back it up. Okay. And once you realize that, then you could go on a journey and see what methodologies people use to try to back up their claims, right? And then what those methodologies are, and how could I tell which ones work and which ones don't work, right? Some people say revelation is a good way to come up with truth. Some people say faith is a good way to come up with truth. Some people say rationalism or empiricism are better tools to come up with what is the truth, right? And then the way to figure out, go look at these tools and look at their track record, right? Look which one of them gives you more consistent, less contradictory explanations, that has explanatory power and also has predictive power. There are certain ways for you to realize which methodologies provide you more consistent results that match reality, right? And then I think if you do this homework, you will come and you will realize that empiricism and then after that rationalism are better than faith and revelation. And then when it comes to when you want to use rationalism, then you might understand that going through logical fallacies and understanding how logical fallacies work, that might make you better at doing rationalism. But even better than rationalism, when you go look at empiricism and see how that works and how that produces results, you will notice that the scientific method has been the best tool that we have had to come up with the best conclusions. And that would be our homework, to go study these different methodologies and try to figure out, how do I realize which one of them work and which one of them doesn't work.
Cool. All right. I don't know if I can get through all of that. I got a job and everything, but I'll try to get at least tackle on soundness and validity, so I can at least, like, I feel like we're like hitting each other, like we're both missing each other. But I think I got close. Right. Thank you for taking your time. I enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Too. Yeah, I said you too on your show.
Thank you.
Have a go. Yeah, have a go one.
Okay.
It's actually what you said there is kind of important in a sense, Armin, is that like, this is why I'm skeptical of giving deductive arguments that are external, because he gives that argument, me and you go, well, we do exist, and so that concept of a God just can't be true. If it's dependent on everybody being imaginary, well, that concept's clearly false, right? We can give an argument to show, but he on the other end will go, but no, we're imaginary, and so we get boom, butt heads on the argument. We just, one accepts premise, one doesn't. That, and you had said something about explanatory power. This is why I opt for this kind of view instead, is to compare the theories. Theories, I don't mean scientific, but compare the worldviews that you have and see which one is just like inflating so much and adding all this unnecessary stuff. And I think that's the best way you're going to do this kind of philosophical endeavor, because you're just always going to find someone who doesn't accept one of your premises in your argument, So that's not to say they're not useful. They can be useful if they're like internal. It's like, hey, you believe A, B, and C? Did you notice D? Oh no, I didn't. I need to go revise my view. Those are very useful. But sometimes you have to just compare the merits of the theory and the virtues, right?
Right, but the issue is that I might be wrong about this, but I think the level that you're at is so high that I'm not sure Peter could make sense of some of the things you're saying, because it's such a higher level of analysis that, I mean, he's like kind of like just starting in to think about these things. So I don't know.
Well, I don't know that he's thinking. I don't know that he's thinking at all, because he doesn't exist. So I don't know if he's thinking at all. I mean, so
right.
There's no brain to be thinking in that view, right? Because he doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, he was doing it. I mean, I think he was doing his I think
No, I
with the
was
question-
being
Yeah.
being cheeky to
Yeah.
the view, because if he doesn't exist, there's just
Yeah.
no thinking going on. So.